Hello and welcome to the Taking Care of Cancer podcast from the Clatterbridge Cancer Centre NHS Foundation Trust. We're about to hear a roller coaster of a story. It's about a journey taken by our guest patient today, Becca Smith, who is aged just 29, when she was given her diagnosis of cancer 4 years ago. And you were told, Becca, you were given just 2 weeks to live. Thankfully, you're still here. Yes. You're looking fit and well, may I say.
Thank you.
So I'm really looking forward to hearing your story.
Thank you.
And also going to hear from a consultant and a specialist nurse, Dr Dan Monnery, Jill Sokratous. Hello.
Hello.
Hey. We'd like to introduce yourselves properly. Tell us what your role is and what that involves.
So I am Jill. I'm a specialist nurse in Neuro Oncology, and my role is to look after people with any sort of brain tumour and spinal tumour diagnosis. And it's very much to encompass the whole person from their diagnosis. So I will look after them from a clinical perspective, but also very much from a holistic perspective as well.
And I'm Dan. I'm a consultant in palliative care. I lead the palliative and supportive care service at Clatterbridge Cancer Centre. So my practice mainly is around looking after people with incurable cancer, and that includes, again, treating the whole person, as Jill said. So I'll see people for pain and symptom management, psychological support, social support, spiritual support, trying to do those initial assessments of what people's needs are through treatment and then link them in with appropriate supportive care services. The enhanced supportive care model is a bit different, so we will also see people having curative treatment and try and support them through their treatment as well if they've got symptoms and side effects that are stopping them from accessing the right treatment for them. So it's a little bit broader than your traditional palliative care model. And I do that both clinically and from a leadership position.
And it's dealing with managing symptoms and side effects that we're here to talk about today. And I should say, I'm Caroline Kenyon. I'm very lucky enough to be hosting this podcast and meeting you wonderful people. I think we should start with you, Becca, and hear your story. So tell us, how it all began and what your life was like when you were first diagnosed and how that happened.
To go back to 2019, I would say, I'm a personal trainer, been a personal trainer for the past 8 years, very much into my health, nutrition, fitness. Was working at a gym at the time and was also setting up a yoga studio because I'd kind of found a new obsession and craze with yoga. So I was busy setting that up as well as personal training, doing lots of long hours. And I started to get a lot of back pain, moving all round parts of my back. Each day would kind of be a little bit different. To the point where then I had to start seeking a bit of therapy. So I had things like physiotherapy, chiropractors, you name it. I was getting to the point where I was just having to try and find to do anything because I was having this back pain, and the physios and people couldn't really suss out what was going on. I just had exercises to do. So that was kind of leading into 2020. And then I'd say in the start of March, things got really bad. The pain was just excruciating to the point where sometimes I couldn't even walk properly. And then my head is now thinking I've got potentially a slipped disc, something that bad, which would obviously put my whole world apart because I'm into fitness. And then it wasn't until I went to Birmingham just before the pandemic to do a children's yoga course that one day I just woke up and my whole vision just went completely black, which we thought I put down to stress because I'd been so stressed setting up the studio, working endless hours, putting all my money and my savings into it. And I somehow managed to get myself home because I had to stop the course. And it was my mum that said, right, we need to go to the opticians to check your eyesight because I've always worn glasses. So, something might be going on. And then I went to the opticians, had the eye test, and the optician found all hemorrhage in the back of my eyes. And her immediate face, and someone's face completely just changes. And she dropped and said to my mum, she needs to go straight to A&E. So that was obviously the first scary warning sign. We went to A&E and I remember being sat with the nurse and she just asked me a simple test of touching her finger. So she just said, please, can you just try and touch my finger? And all I remember is just not getting anywhere near it. And the simple little task of doing something like that, I just couldn't understand. And again, it was her face that also dropped. And she said to my mum, right, she needs to stay in the hospital. We need to do some tests. So obviously alarm bells goes, panicking, and we'd put it down to, I thought it was just severe stress that I'd been under. So I get admitted into hospital. And I spend the next 2 weeks there, I think, and I have every test. I have a CT, I have MRI. They take a biopsy of my back, which we thought obviously was the root cause of something going on there because I just couldn't get rid of the pain. Then I started to suffer with severe headaches and migraines. Then I developed a cough. And now this was kind of at the start of the pandemic, so it kind of all gets a bit hazy as to what actually happened. But the biopsy has eventually, actually again ended up saving my life, but I'll obviously talk about that. So after, all the tests going on and my health kind of deteriorating a bit, we didn't really understood what it was, but I was just very poorly. And then March the 18th comes and I'm just lying in bed in hospital. I remember posting on my Instagram saying, guys, I'm doing all these tests, but I'm absolutely fine. Wait and see what happens. Obviously, the worst case scenario is going to be a slip disc. And, like I said, my career is going to change and anything. So I was lying there March the 18th in bed in the morning and 2 doctors approached me. And they didn't close the curtain. They didn't, say, do you want your family here? We've got your results of the scans. So I was lying there thinking, no, why? What's going on? And they just said, we've done all your tests and your scans, and I'm sorry, it's not good news. It's cancer. And I can't. Obviously, it's all a bit of a blur. Just heard the word cancer, and followed by it's spread all over the body, and there's nothing we can do. And that was it. I was just left with that news to then have to ring my family, and all I remember is screaming down the phone to my mum, it's cancer, it's cancer. And within the blink of an eye, I just remember my whole family being around my bedside. My dad talking to the doctors, my mum and my sister just holding me. And that was kind of the whirlwind of the start of my journey.
That's such a traumatic experience for you.
Yes.
Dan and Jill, I've got to ask you here to your reflections on that story. That can't be typical, surely.
I mean, it's my reflection is that it's not very good, is it? The experience that you've had. I think it's not uncommon, if I'm honest. I think that the way in which people are given bad news, particularly when they're not expecting it, is not universally very well done. Jill, what do you think? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, it's what happened sounds absolutely horrific and incredibly traumatic for anyone to have a cancer diagnosis when you're surrounded by the people that you love there. But when you're on your own in such a vulnerable situation, especially when it comes so unexpectedly, because of course you had not been even remotely prepared for that whatsoever. Am I completely shocked at how it happened? No, because sadly, I think certainly in my practice, I hear this regularly. I think a lot of the time it is done incredibly well, but we do sadly hear that there are some situations where it is shockingly bad. And how does a person recover from that, from a psychological point of view, in order to be in the right mindset to then move on to the next steps of what has to happen and process that information appropriately? That's an incredibly difficult thing to try and do. Mm-hmm. And I think it's our role really as nurses, doctors, whoever it is, patient-facing people, to make this better.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And I know you do get support from a psychologist at Clatterbridge, and we'll go on to hear more about the support that you get, as well as how you manage side effects. And you could say this is a side effect of your diagnosis that you're now dealing with. But going back to your story, at the time you were given, I think, 2 weeks to live.
Yes, they told my mum and dad, they had the scan results in front of them. Basically the cancer was completely covered in my lungs. It was all in my brain. It was all down my spine. So from the MRI and the CT, what they've looked at, they've seen it everywhere, and they've just said she's got 2 weeks, if that, to live. So then I was sent to kind of like a private room in the hospital where suddenly I was on an oxygen machine. I wasn't breathing very well. Like I said, the migraines were just horrendous. I was dosed up on all kinds of morphine and very strong painkillers. And then I think a week passed and my mum basically just said she's not spending the rest of her, the last of her days here. We want to take her home. So I remember getting the ambulance home and then palliative nurses were coming out to the house. Again, I'm sure if you sat with one of my family members, they could probably recall a bit more than me. Because it's all a bit of a blur. Obviously, because the tumours were so big and all over my brain, and also I was very dosed up on morphine and everything. I was kind of out of it and also on oxygen. But I remember just lying in my bed and was just having friends, family, just come to say their goodbyes. Because it was COVID, they were having to sit at the end of the room with a mask on, with gloves and everything, just so they could come and say that. I remember my friends reading out poems, and it just gives me goosebumps. Yeah, and friends coming to do Reiki on me, anything. So I had friends travel from London and all sorts, just for everyone to come and say their goodbyes. And it was then, I think, before we got the phone call from Walton, it was my sister, who is just, I see it I always call her my angel, because she's got this fighting spirit like the rest of us do, but she was like, this just isn't happening. What can I do? So she got in contact with somebody who deals with cancer, nutrition, everything like that. And she basically was given a set of juices to follow, certain recipes. So I was drinking. I remember her force feeding me things like avocado and walnut smoothies, turmeric powder, you name it. She was doing it. I was having people coming out doing Reiki on me, trying to find all the alternative things to do because we just had nothing to go off, which my family said. And then it was 2 weeks after being at home that I haven't actually passed away. And my mum gets a phone call from Walton Hospital.
That's the Walton Centre?
Yes. From the biopsy. And apparently, unbeknown to me, there's a lady on the other end of the phone jumping for joy, saying that we found a mutation in the biopsy that Becca's got. And it's called ALK, positive. And it's a very rare form of cancer. It's a gene mutation, and there is treatment available for her that will prolong her life. It's not going to cure the cancer, but it's going to treat it and manage it and prolong her life essentially. And then that's when my mum came upstairs to give me the news, and that's kind of then when the process of the next chapter of the journey started with Clatterbridge.
Amazing. Yes, any reflections at this point, because the story goes on and there are twists and turns, but
just very happy for you that it turned out the way it did. I mean, it is an extremely rare form of cancer, but actually, it's shows the importance of getting all the information, doesn't it, before giving.
It's the biopsy, and I've spoke to so many people about it, and all the people to do with ALK and the charity work, they always push and they always say, make sure you get a biopsy, because that's where they find things like the gene mutations. They're not going to see that on an MRI scan and a CT. So it's pushing for things like biopsies.
Absolutely.
That can save your life.
I do want to talk about the side effects that you get through your treatment and how you manage them. Just to bring the story up to speed though, those tumours went, didn't they? In a matter of months with the therapies, they actually went.
Yes.
And you were tumour free, weren't you, for how long was it?
By the time I got to, so I was diagnosed in March 2020. By the time I got to September 2020, I was given NED, which means no evidence of disease. So it doesn't mean all clear, because it's still there. It just means that it's so small that it's basically undetectable in the scanners. It's unmeasurable, because the way I can describe it, it's not, when people ask me what it is, it's not a tumour as such that can be taken out. It's metastatic. So it's almost, if you picture like a paint splatter, that's how I would describe it. So it's kind of like little bits and bobs of cancer as such in things like my bones, and it was in my lungs. They've been clear ever since, still to this day, 4 years on. And then, like I said, in my brain.
Amazing.
So, yeah, and that's
you've gone from 2 weeks to live to no evidence of cancer.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. But then, if you fast forward a little bit, I think it was September 22?
Yeah.
2022.
So I started on the first line of therapy, which was called alectinib. So there's TKIs, so they're... So I was on alectinib, which was kind of like the first generation, they're called, of the TKIs. And that worked for 2 years, kept the cancer at bay, got the first NED results. And then September 21, was it, did I say? Or 22?
I thought it was 22.
Maybe 2022. I was told bad news of, unfortunately, that it had progressed again in my brain. And again, going back to getting that diagnosis again, it was in a better setting with my oncologist, dealt with in a much better way, but it was the whole traumatic experience of being re-diagnosed, going through PTSD, having everything. Yeah, it felt like I'd just been diagnosed again with cancer. So
You were back there.
yes.
In that place. So Becca, you're on a different treatment now. How is that working and how are you now today?
So I started on lorlatinib, which is another generation of the TKIs available to me. And I have been on that now for over a year. And a rocky start, to say the least, I would say. Because obviously with every tablet, each comes different side effects. So was told when starting lorlatinib that it's very potent on the brain. It has a lot of toxicities. And, everyone has to start off at 100 milligram, which is just one single tablet that everybody takes. But there is also room to reduce if people just physically can't handle the toxicity of it without hopefully obviously changing anything to do with the cancer. And because that was always my biggest worry, I think I stuck out the side effects to start with, because I thought, oh my God, I can't reduce them because it will, they won't work as well. And so I would go, I think for the first few months, it was really bad. I was having sleepless nights. It causes things like severe depression, mood swings, dizziness and balance problems, all kinds of different cognitive side effects that were listed, I pretty much had. But I think I tried to just ignore them for the first couple of months because I just thought I don't want to reduce, because with alectinib that wasn't a possibility. So again, with this one I thought that's not a thing. But then I think it got so severe in terms of the side effects that I then had to speak up and say, I don't think I can actually handle this. So we reduced to 75 milligram. And then a few months later still found the side effects to just be as severe as they were. And then we reduced to 50 milligram. It was obviously a joint team decision. So I've been on 50 milligram now for the past, I'd say 6 months, I think. And the cancer, again, I'm getting clear NED scans. So there's been no changes or anything. So everything is doing its job as it should. And the side effects have calmed down to the point where I can live my life. They're still there, but they've been reduced a lot more. And I've introduced a antidepressant. So I'm on fluoxetine, which is actually meant to help with counteracting the side effects cognitively. Is it the
SSRI?
SSRI, yeah. So there's certain ones that can help with side effects and reducing them. So that's helping, I think.
So depression is a side effect. Are there any other side effects that you're managing? The way I try to describe it to my oncologist, I've always had this feeling of there's like bees in my head, like a bee's nest. It's all quite like stingy. And when I'm trying to describe it to him, he obviously doesn't really understand it, because he said every patient will have different side effects. So he was just saying that obviously because the cancer is not evident in your brain, it's not the cancer. So whatever you're feeling symptom-wise will be the side effect of the drug. And because, like I said, it is so brain potent, it's feeling sometimes like a fuzzy, like stingy kind of head feeling. It's very strange. Yes, that does sound strange. So Dan, as palliative care consultant, what is your role when you're dealing with a patient like Becca, in you understanding the side effects and balancing it with a treatment? How do you go about that?
So often I'll have patients referred to me at the point of a diagnosis of a cancer that can't be cured, even though it can be treated. So that's slightly different, I think, from the kind of palliative care you had, Becca, where you went home and they were coming to see you at home and give you medications because you'd been given that bad news and that prognosis. So they were doing a slightly different kind of palliative care to what I would ordinarily do.
Yeah.
But it's quite a broad church, so you will see quite a scope within palliative care. So my role where I work at Clatterbridge is more along supporting the side effects and symptoms and holistic care for people alongside treatment, knowing that at some point those treatment options are going to run out, perhaps, but not necessarily we're not necessarily at that point now when people come to see me. So what that means is that actually I deal with a lot more treatment side effects and toxicities, particularly early on, whilst people are going through chemotherapy, immunotherapy, TKI, radiation, you name it. And then as things change over time, however long that happens to be, the importance of my role seems to be more linking people in with services closer to them and sort of teeing people up for those important conversations and supporting them through those conversations. I also have access to a wider multidisciplinary team, so that's what the enhanced supportive care model is like. So if I see people who actually need more support from physiotherapy, for example, in the lead up to chemotherapy or through chemotherapy to keep them fit, then I'll try and link them in early. I'll refer to dietitians when people are losing weight. I'll try and link people in with peer support groups in order to support them psychosocially and make sure that they've got support for their families and carers as well. So I'm trying to do all of that alongside treatment so that we've got a focus that's not just, okay, next cycle of treatment, next cycle of treatment, scan, next cycle of treatment, next cycle of treatment. It's more about making sure that you're as well as you can be alongside that treatment for as long as that treatment goes on. And as the enhanced supportive care model has developed, we've started to now see people who are having curative treatment as well, because actually the length of time has never mattered from my point of view in terms of what I do. It's supporting people to stay well for as long as possible. So why wouldn't I do that for people having curative treatment as well? There's no reason why we can't do that. So it's an ever sort of changing field. But in terms of my role as a palliative care physician, I come from that perspective of symptom focus rather than chemotherapy or treatment focus, in the hope that that adds something to people's quality of life alongside the treatment they're having to prolong life.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, but the term palliative care, I know you struggle with this, Dan, don't you? Because people link the term palliative care with end-of-life care. And as you just said, it's about supporting people throughout treatment, no matter how long that journey is.
Yeah.
I think as a patient as well, the word palliative, that's what you think is end of life, and you don't want to hear that word.
Yeah. It's a difficult one, and there's a lot of debate in palliative care about, are we calling ourselves the right thing? Is that acting as a barrier to people accessing support from us? Because the expectation is that you only see people who are at the end of their lives, and there was this discussion about whether we rebrand ourselves as supportive care rather than palliative care. To my mind, that has the same issues. If you rename it, that name then gets the same tarred with the same brush, and it adds an element of dishonesty to it to me as well. When I meet people, I tell them I'm a palliative care consultant, because if they look me up on the GMC website, you would see that I'm a palliative care consultant, and then you'd know that I told you a lie. So that doesn't well, you would, and it doesn't it doesn't create a trust and supportive relationship between us. There's no need for me to lie to you. All I've got to do is explain why you're seeing a palliative care person in the context of the treatment that you're having. Yes, I'm a palliative care doctor, but I'm seeing you for symptom control. Bearing in mind, I also see people who are having curative treatment, and I also see people who have late effects of cured cancer. So it's, just because you're seeing me doesn't mean that your prognosis is short. And there's a nice quote from Catherine Mannix, who's a palliative care doctor turned author and speaker, and she's put on one of these quotes on Twitter, is that just because you're seeing a palliative care team doesn't mean you're obliged to die. And that's very much how I work. If I can do something for you, I'll do it.
Brilliant. And Jill, as a nurse and dealing with patients day in, day out throughout the day, listening to all their concerns, what are the kind of concerns that come to you about side effects?
I think it's so unique to the individual. I mean, for my patient group, their symptoms can vary based on the specific diagnosis, the location of their tumour, the treatment that they're having, the stage that they are at within their diagnosis, treatment or journey through that. And those symptoms, I have to say, I could have a patient with the exact same diagnosis in the exact same location, but they will vary person to person because of who they are and what's important to them. The sort of most important thing for me as a nurse and as a key worker for patients with brain tumours is to get to know someone so that we can really unpick their symptoms and really, really get to the bottom of what's going on, so that I can utilise help from someone like Dan, for example, when I need to, and so that I can manage them on my own when I'm capable, and that's within the limitations of my role. There are very typical symptoms that somebody with, if we look specifically at somebody with a brain tumour has, they can have things like headaches, nausea, vomiting, other things that are potentially slightly more subtle and quite often discovered in hindsight can be things like personality changes, cognitive effects, which is looking at things like memory, short-term memory, decision making, processing information. There can be other things like patients can have seizures, and that's not always a big scary event like we see on TV. Sometimes that's a really subtle symptom that somebody might not pick up on for a while, but when you see someone who knows what they're looking for, they can. And often patients might present to me in clinic or on the phone or on email with a symptom that they think is one thing but actually transpires to be something completely different, and we manage it maybe in a different way. So
I think as well, when you've just listed those symptoms then of a brain tumour and all, there, if you look at the side effects of my tablets, they're also a side effect of the tablet. So then as a patient, obviously, like I struggle to find the difference. Obviously, the worst thing to ever do is Google something and you get a side effect and you Google it and it will tell you it's a brain tumour. And I think that's also then, as a patient, it's so hard to actually rationalise and say it could just be a side effect, because if you've ever suffered with a brain tumour or cancer in the brain of some sort, you kind of take yourself straight to that. And I guess, I don't know if you probably will have seen so many patients that leading up to scans is where the symptoms, as I always try to say, when they're not scanxiety, the symptoms and all the side effects, they just explode a couple of weeks before your scans. And it's taken me a few years to really practice a lot of mindfulness, and I do a lot of things to look after my mental health, but leading up to my scans, it's taken me a few years to get to the point where I'm not having severe panic attacks and ringing my nurse every day saying I've got this symptom, it's definitely this, and she's trying to reassure me, because it's all the symptoms suddenly just appear so much worse because of the scanxiety.
Scanxiety, there's a new word for me anyway.
Yeah, it's horrendous.
And we see it every day, and it's completely understandable because the fear of recurrence is real. And particularly for somebody who is told that they've got an incurable diagnosis, it is there all the time. And I guess one of the things sort of following on from that is why it is so important that when you do have symptoms, Google's there, yes, absolutely, and everybody does it, but go to your healthcare professional, go to your specialist, because that is why we are here.
I've got mine on speed dial.
Yeah,
the driver insane.
You don't know.
I ring her all the time.
Because that is what we are here for. And I say to my patients, I would rather know if you had a sore toe than not know, because it might not be related, but it might be, and it's not your job to figure that out. It is absolutely our job to take those symptoms, hopefully be able to reassure you, but not always. And sometimes we do have to manage them and investigate and deal with them and treat them, but that is why we're there. Not so that you can sit at home in a pool of worry and not know where to turn. Because that is horrendous. That is a dark place to be.
Yeah. Speaking to other cancer patients, we all say it, if we could have a scanner sat in our bedroom and jump on a scanner every day, we would, but that's not good for anyone. That's not healthy. So yeah, it is. It's finding how to manage your symptoms, side effects, and also the importance of. I feel, with my experience of Clatterbridge and hearing of other people's experiences, I say to everyone, in the most unfortunate situation, I feel so fortunate because I'm so well supported, in all the different aspects with my nurses, my oncologist. I feel like we're a team. and we make decisions together. And obviously, like we talk about, Anne-Marie, my counsellor as well. So yeah, I feel the support that people need with your cancer diagnosis is massive, and I do get it from Clatterbridge. I think you guys do the most incredible job.
Thank you.
And the psychological support obviously is so important, isn't it? And you're seeing Anne-Marie Orr, the psychologist, and
yes.
she's helping you and counselling you. And that's in effect what you both do, Dan and Jill, isn't it? You're thinking about the individual and giving them psychological support, responding to their concerns. Becca, it'd be great to hear how you manage your side effects and how you live a healthy as possible life. What's your way of doing that? We're going to hear in a moment from a specialist, a dietitian, but first of all, from you, what do you do?
So like I said, my previous background, personal training, health, fitness, nutrition, I've always been very passionate about it. I had a year off. I always say I had a year off life to just recover. It was COVID. I then started to, obviously because of that, I thought my fitness and the gym and everything, that was completely over. I'd never be able to do anything like that again. And then a couple of years later, I ended up going back into the gym, doing more light weight work, Pilates, yoga, swimming. I do lots of walking. And now my regime is, I'm very strict with my nutrition. I still stick with my juices. I make cold pressed juices every day. I eat pretty much, I wouldn't say completely plant-based. I have fish. I'd say the Mediterranean diet, because that's what I was given advice on. So a lot of omega-3s, try to eat whole raw foods as much as possible, and make sure my sleep is the most important thing, between 8 to 10 hours every night. I do lots of meditation, nature, I do lots of cold water swimming, I do lots of reading. I try to live the most stress-free life, because I think looking back, it's probably stress is what nearly killed me, to be honest. And I think I say to people, it shouldn't have taken a cancer diagnosis for me to realise what's important and what's not. But at the same time, I'm also grateful for what it's given me and what perspective it's given me, because as long as you're healthy, you've got your family and your friends, your day-to-day life, you're smiling, that's all that matters. So that's how I just try to live my life, to make sure that I'm smiling every day. I eat as healthily as possible. I do regular exercise. I've just actually opened my own personal training and Pilates studio. So I'm back to being a business lady as well, but in a more, not in a crazy stressful way. So that's just trying how to live my life.
Congratulations on opening
Absolutely.
your studio.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
We're going to go into some detail now about diet in particular, because we've visited Clatterbridge Cancer Centre to talk to a dietitian there, Lauren Roberts. So we're going to hear from Lauren now, some top tips on eating with cancer.
Cancer and cancer treatments can have an impact on appetite and the way patients eat. So cancer itself can cause a general loss of appetite. Cancer treatments such as chemotherapy, radiotherapy, immunotherapy can all cause loss of appetite as well, and that might be because of treatment side effects that patients experience with those certain types of treatment. So general advice we would give to start with for a patient that has lost appetite and interest in food may be to adopt a little and often approach with their eating. So rather than focusing on 3 standard main meals a day, it might be that they break that down into small snacky type meals and do that sort of 6 times throughout the day. It might be that we advise on what we call food fortification. So that's enriching food with calories and protein, for instance, using quite often dairy products to make the most out of that meal and get the most nutritional value. So nausea can be quite a common side effect on treatment, particularly chemotherapy and radiotherapy. So some strategies that we may advise might be, again, to eat sort of little and often. It might be that colder foods are better tolerated, that carry sort of less smell, that can sometimes be off-putting. So cold meats, for instance, and cold food, such as puddings, ice cream, yoghurt, that sort of thing. and also taste changes as well. So that's quite a big one and a common one we come across quite often. And that again can be as a result of cancer treatment itself, or it can be as a result of certain medications as well, or a symptom after surgery if they've been through a surgical procedure. So it might be we ask patients to add sort of extra salt and pepper to their food at the table, or add extra spices and herbs to cooking, or marinating food such as meat, for instance, in a fruit juice or wine, just to enhance that flavour. If anyone would like a referral into the Clatterbridge Oncology Dietetic Service, we would encourage you to speak to your oncologist or your specialist nurse at Clatterbridge, or any member of the Clatterbridge team that you are seeing for a referral to us. We also have resources on our Clatterbridge website as well for your information, and we can also give you literature once you are referred in.
Thank you, Lauren Roberts. Diet advice? What sort of thing do you say to your patients who they really can't face food?
I think it's very variable, and it largely depends what treatment people are having and the side effects they're having. I think the first thing to say is you've got to kind of eat what will give you some energy in some stages, particularly in the palliative care setting. Actually, healthy diet is important if we can manage it, but there are certain treatments that will deactivate your sense of taste. There are certain cancers that affect your sense of taste, such that trying to stick with the traditional British diet of meat and 2 veg doesn't really work because it doesn't taste right. Red meat doesn't taste right when you're having chemotherapy and sometimes when you have certain kinds of cancer. Bread goes a funny taste. Tea and coffee goes a funny taste. So trying to get people to eat more and keep their calories up and keep their weight up through chemotherapy within the constraints of that normal diet, it's just not possible because everything tastes rotten and your body won't let you eat what doesn't taste normal. It's sort of a natural built-in defense mechanism to stop you from eating food that's off. So generally what I will say to people is actually experiment with different flavour groups. There are generally different flavours that people will still be able to taste in spite of chemotherapy. So those are usually sweet things. They are strong flavours, so your strong cheeses, Marmite, Bovril. Citrus flavours, so the yoghurts that contain a lot of citrus fruits, they're usually quite palatable. And then your spices, so that's not necessarily hot, but can be, but also garlic, ginger, soy, because it's got that umami flavour to it. So a lot of the people that I see are keeping their weight and energy up through chemotherapy with Chinese takeaways, and that's fine because you can pick healthy ones, you can pick vegetable based, you can pick brown rice based, but the flavour is important, and if you can taste it and it tastes pleasurable, you'll eat more of it. It is worse to lose weight through your chemotherapy, because then you end up more fatigued, less able to tolerate the dose, more toxicities, and then it gets stopped. Because if you're losing weight and not doing well on chemotherapy, they stop it. So the aim is to stay fit in and keep a good weight on you if you can. Now, the other thing that I say to people that are after treatment and trying to build themselves up again is actually that is where you've got more of that balanced diet needed to try and build yourself back up again. So complex carbohydrate, high protein where you can, built in with exercise to try and, almost regenerate your muscles. So people that I see in that situation, I'm saying, right, well, your rehab needs to look like a walking tour of all the restaurants in Liverpool. Off you go. And people do. It gets them out of the house, it gets them walking, it gets them eating, it gets them trying new flavours that will suit their new palate, as it is so often after the case of treatment, and people can build up again that way. So that's the kind of advice that I would give.
A restaurant tour of Liverpool, so not lots of takeaways. Go out there and enjoy your restaurants.
Absolutely. I mean, takeaways are fine if you're having chemotherapy and you're tired and getting out and about is a bit more difficult. You've got to put an effort into trying to stay as fit as possible, but sometimes it's not possible, And in that situation, you've got to stay eating and you've got to eat what will agree with you, what you can taste. So, I do let people have a Chinese takeaway or anything else they want to have taken away, to be honest. Actually, the aim of the game is maintaining your weight and maintaining your energy. That's important.
And maintaining quality of life.
Absolutely.
And if that means having a massive slice of chocolate cake. then I think you should go for it.
Absolutely. We're all for the cake.
We are. We absolutely are. Some of the treatments that we give for patients with brain cancer have got dietary restrictions, one in particular, and it's always a very important conversation when we are talking about considering starting that treatment, because there are restrictions and that can massively impact on someone's quality of life, because all of the things that they enjoy might suddenly be taken away for treatment. And that's really, really tough for people, because you might get someone who their joy in life is food, and that's amazing. And we've got to do what we can to promote it. So yeah, food is important.
It is.
So food's important. What else is important that's impacted by treatment that you counsel patients about?
Energy. So it's important to go into treatment as fit as you can and maintain it if you can. Because the more exercise you do and the more fitness you have, the less side effects you'll get. So often we will say to people, it's important that you do something every day. Even people who are already fatigued, if you can try and build up your exercise levels so that you're walking every day, doing something every day. The distance, the speed is not as important as the regularity. Something has to happen every day in order for you to be using your muscles and generating a bit of energy. And if you know that you've got treatment coming up, that's the time to try and really build up. And then it's about maintenance after that. There is a great temptation once treatment started to shut off from the world and just say, right, I'm in treatment mode at the moment, so I'm going to stay at home, I'm going to rest as much as possible, I'll order all of those Chinese takeaways that Dan's recommended, and that's what's going to happen. But actually your fitness drops off if that happens, and then you get really fatigued. And that's difficult to undo without stopping the chemo, or at least pausing it. So, yeah, I've got drugs that will give you an energy boost, but actually that's not as good as maintaining a level of fitness. It doesn't work as well. And exercise is also a bit naturally anti-inflammatory as well, so it's got positive benefits in terms of pain and sleep and side effect management. So it's better to stay active if we can achieve that within the confines of realism. There are people that are in too much pain to do that, or have weakness that aren't able to do that, and we have to work around that. But all being equal, exercise is good.
I think, Becca, you're a great role model for exercise. You are a personal trainer after all, but it still has to take some personal determination where you really can't face it to get yourself up and out. So how have you done that through hard times especially?
I guess I had to adapt my own style of training. I've come from a background of weight training. I used to compete in competitions. So I've had to find my own way of exercise and understanding what's actually good for my body and nourishing my body rather than punishing it. So I've found things like, so I walk every morning with my friends. It's just our morning routine to get up and out for an hour's walk. Obviously that's getting the fresh air, seeing your friends. Even if, I was listening to a podcast the other day, she was saying, even if it's just a 5-minute walk, if you're sat on that sofa and you've just had your dinner, go for a 5-minute walk. Also helps to move the food around your body, all the glucose and everything. But things like keeping your resistance work up, even if it's just body weight, so Pilates and yoga, there are so many health benefits that come with that, because you're just using your body weight. And you can go to different classes. You could go to a beginner's class, you could go and do a mindfulness class. It's just about daily movements. And that's what, with my new studio, that I've adapted my personal training methods, because it used to be getting people fit for the beach because somebody wanted a 6-pack. Now it's about, I want to actually get stronger. I want to actually move my hips a little bit more. I want to be able to walk 10,000 steps and not 5,000. It's just about adapting to what feels right for you, but making sure you're just moving. That's pretty much the what I would say to people is just move your body in any way. It doesn't have to be a rigorous hours gym session.
It's good news. That's good advice for everybody, isn't it, really? And Jill, your advice to your patients is very personal, isn't it? So it's not just diet and exercise, but it's very personally tailored, isn't it?
I think, as I said earlier, it is so important that we provide individualised care. And I think, Becca, what you say is so incredible. And I'm listening to your story, I'm thinking, wow, that is amazing. but that might not work for everyone. In particular, some of my patients absolutely could not manage to get out for that walk with their friends. But I guess our role comes in here, what can we do to get them there if possible, or to do something similar? And, you know, we spoke about using energy, and we quite often talk about having to use energy to build energy, both from a physical point of view and a mental point of view. And sometimes we quite literally will sit with someone at any point in their treatment or after treatment and make a timetable of what they will do at points in the day just to get them there, so they can tick that box, so that we have got a plan for them that suits them.
And I remember at the start of my recovery, when I was very, very poorly and weak, and we kind of created a timetable, and it was something like getting a shower. And if at some point somebody might be that unwell or that physically, you know, they're not able to do much more than that, but even just setting yourself something like getting a bath, getting a shower, walking up the stairs, it's like you said, everyone is at such different levels and stages of their health within this crazy journey that I can sit here and say, yeah, I do my 10,000 steps every day and I do X, Y, and Z. But I wasn't doing that 3-4 years ago when I was very poorly. I was taking a couple of little steps. So I guess my advice would be to not get so overwhelmed with what other people are doing. I should be doing that because they're doing it. It's like you said, it's so individual and personal to you and where you're at. It's just about managing your cancer and keeping yourself well as possible.
And that's so important for quality of life, isn't it? When we think about, certainly for people who go through any type of oncological treatment, the focus has to be on quality of life. Otherwise, what's the point, really? As Dan said, if you then have such significant symptoms and toxicities that we have made you not able to do the things that you enjoy doing, it can seem extremely disheartening. So I guess our role is here to look at someone as an individual and say, what's important to you? What do you do in your life? What do you enjoy? What do you love? You might not be able to do it now. We might never get there, but can we get almost there? Can we get round about it in a different way? Can we do something similar? And, you know, alongside things like physical activity in particular, we look a lot at neurocognition and how we can support people. And that's not necessarily just for people with brain tumours, because, as you said, there are some treatments out there that can cause significant side effects around cognition. Fatigue is also really, really significant when it comes to looking at mental health and, you know, higher cognitive function. So sometimes it can be as simple as doing a jigsaw with your family. Yeah. When you're sat with your Chinese takeaway, you know, in the evening. It's about that rewarding quality time. And that might mean that we have to figure out and spend, you know, some time looking into jigsaws that somebody who has a visual impairment can use easily. We can do that for you. That's what we're here for, if that's what's important to you. It might be that actually what you really, really want to do to manage your side effects and your symptoms and support your neurocognition and really train yourself is play the guitar. Because once you did, and you've got a weakness now, so how do we get you back to that? Well, that might be with physiotherapy, occupational therapy, music lessons. It might be that we get you in a studio and something like that. You know, what can we do to get you to the point that you have a quality of life that is unique and individual to you? And that, I think, is certainly for me why I'm here. It is about the person in front of me.
And I'd also say that being a patient myself, I think at the start of my cancer diagnosis, it was, like I said, it was terrifying, and I was just, you know, in and out of hospital, being given all these info and advice. But I think over time, and I've started to obviously, you know, come to terms with what's going on, I've also then started to really take charge of my own body. And I say to everybody, knowledge is power. Look into, like, it's scary, and it can be scary. But the more you learn and the more you understand about what's going in your body, the more you can also contribute, because you guys, you know, you're giving information and advice. And as a patient not knowing anything, you can be sat there thinking, oh, well, whatever they're telling me, I'll do it. But I think it's so important to also be a part of that conversation and be a part of the decisions made, because at the end of the day, it's my body, I'm living in it. And So I think knowledge is power, and again, going back to different cancers, each cancer is so different. So I get asked advice about what I do with my diet and all the different things, and why I don't eat this and why I do eat this. But when I say to everybody, that's what I do, and it's not necessarily the right thing to do. It's just what I do. So again, do your research, find what's best for you in terms of treatment, food, nutrition, movement.
I think when you go through such a significant trauma as having a cancer diagnosis, and goodness me, in particular, the way you went through that, but there's a loss of control. You suddenly become completely encompassed by the system, investigations, tests, waiting for bad news. You feel that the control that you should have and ordinarily have had over your body and your life has been ripped from under you. And I certainly feel that if we can find a way to support and empower people to gain as much of that control back as possible. Yes, I appreciate there will always be the moments when you feel that you're at completely lost control because you're waiting for a scan result, or you've got symptoms that you don't understand.
And my advice there would be, I always say to people, control your controllables.
Yes.
So like you said, you can't control that scan date that's coming. That's just a matter of fact. But how are you going to control your feelings and emotions leading to, and your behaviours towards it? Because I have like a set plan in place leading up to my scans of all the things that make me feel good. So the things that I do, things, like I don't really take baths, but leading up to scans, a bath just completely soothes me. A certain playlist that I listen to. So yeah, it's like you said, it's control the controllables, like I say to people.
So you all have fantastic advice that listeners will learn from, whatever position they're in. But as you say, it's personal and you have to come up with your own. But if I was to ask you just to finish this conversation for one piece of advice that you would give to people listening, whatever position they're in, as a cancer patient or someone who's caring for a cancer patient, what might that be? Jill, do you want to start?
For me, I do give this advice to every single person that I see. Just call me. Call me. Never sit at home and worry about something. Never sit at home and wonder. Never feel the need to sit, and Google something for 3 days and worry about what something might be or who you can go to for help. Call your specialist. That is 100% what they are there for. And if we know about it, we can do something about it, and we can work together to get you as well as possible so that you tolerate treatment and enjoy your quality of life. So I know people for some reason think, I don't want to bother those nurses and those doctors. We'd much rather know about it at the time that it happened than 3 days later when someone's poorly and we could have managed their symptoms. So please just call us. You've got our number for a reason.
I think for me, leading on from what Jill said, I think my advice is don't shut yourself away. You're allowed to have days off, you're allowed to have bad days when you're going through treatment, but actually it's very, very tempting when you have a cancer diagnosis, from what I've seen from people and when you're on treatment, to lock yourself away and never go out and not ask for help and not meet other people, and the psychological impact on that, the fitness impact of that, the ability to reach out and find help, from when you've locked yourself away is very, very difficult. Actually, it's about trying to stay engaged, trying to stay as physically active as possible, trying to get out and about and eat as much as possible, try and get engaged with other people that friends, family, and also people that are going through this with you so that you can get the right support when needed. Fight that temptation to lock yourself away, because it then causes problems for you later that's then more difficult to fix.
And I'd say off the back of that, what my counsellor Anne-Marie, psychologist, has always taught me, don't feed into your anxiety. So like you said, if you get I always talk about my angel and my devil sat on my shoulder, and the devil, like you said, is, the one saying, no, you're not feeling great, don't go out, something might happen, you just want to wallow. And you're feeding into that anxiety by, I've done it before, I've tried to talk myself out of going to some events because I just think, I can't face it. And then I'm like, do you know what? Bat it off, and off you go, and you'll come home and think, I'm so glad I did that. Mm-hmm. You'll always feel better after you've done it.
So Becca, what's your final last tip that you would give to people?
I would say that for anybody that has been given a cancer diagnosis or any other life event that has completely just turned your world upside down, the way I describe my cancer diagnosis was like being plummeted into a black hole. And at the time, you just think there is just no way out. And over time, you will just find little ladders up this black hole to just slowly but surely really come out of the black hole, and you will see a bit of light. And some days the light will feel brighter than others, and that's okay. But just remember, for every dark day, there's always going to be a lighter day following.
That's wise words. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Becca Smith, Dan Monnery and Jill Sokratous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.